Hi, I'm Alfonso Muchacho, and today I want to talk about inspiration, or the lack of it. Now, sometimes you can get on a roll and everything you do just sounds utterly amazing. And this happens more often after you've spent years of learning techniques and gaining experience in making music. But sometimes, no matter what you do, everything you press and everything you play sounds like a dying dog. So, how do you overcome this? Some people, they wait around for inspiration. I choose to make inspiration happen because I've got news for you. Watching 6 hours of Netflix is not going to help. But what might help is one of these techniques that I'm going to show you now. So first up, I sometimes find having too many options overwhelming. And we've all been in that place where we're just endlessly scrolling through presets and not being able to find anything we like. For this very reason, I've uninstalled a lot of plugins simply because I'd go looking for a simple bass sound and end up with a full boys choir singing something that sounds like it belongs in a Christopher Nolan film. It sounds great, but it's too much, certainly too much for a techno track. One way to get around this is to restrict yourself to certain synths, and because I'm lucky enough to own a few great hardware instruments, I can sit down and decide to only use them. So I'll try to make an entire track using just hardware and no presets. Now, this serves two purposes. The first is you'll actually have to think about what sounds you want to make, as no one has made a preset for you. The second is you'll come up with a completely different result than when you're using your hands to turn knobs and faders than if you're just dragging a mouse across the screen. This track I've made completely from external sounds, spending hours experimenting. It could have been more efficient for me to do it in the box, but I'm 100% sure that this way was a lot more fun. If you don't have much in the way of hardware instruments, you can do the same sort of thing, but restrict yourself to purely using samples. Now, this can obviously be samples from a sample pack, but also it might be an idea to make a track entirely from samples of other songs. You could even sample your own songs. This worked for The Prodigy on more than one occasion. Don't be afraid to experiment. A poor quality YouTube clip can sound amazing when pitched down and processed right, if that's the kind of sound you're going for. Another technique that I've practiced a lot over the years is making a melody and then running it through different effects multiple times and then joining it all back together. It's easier if I explain within the context of a track. So here's my unreleased track Evade, and I'll play you a part of it now. And just pay attention to the main melody. made this melody in Diva, but I got bored of the sound quite quickly. So instead of scrapping it, I ran it out of the computer and through my mixer using some of the cheap onboard reverbs. Then I repeated the process, running it through a couple of guitar pedals, playing around with the controls in real time. The final recording I did, I think I put it through one of my synths, maybe the Waldorf Pulse 2. I used the filter to roll off the high end. Once this was all recorded back into Ableton, I then randomly spliced up the sounds and made them into one audio track. Take a listen in solo and you can hear all the changes in sound, the volume and a few clicks and pops as well. So you can hear how random that all sounds. It's really far from perfect, on purpose. There's sometimes jarring of differences in tone and volume create a far more interesting sound than if I just use the effects in Ableton. Sometimes I'll create a melody and it'll quickly get annoying. One thing I try to do before I delete it forever is render it to audio and then reverse it. Now, 82% of the time this sounds terrible and it will continue to sound terrible, but occasionally you'll accidentally create a gem. So as you can hear, nothing very special going on with that piano. Let's record it and then let's reverse it. I'm just going to record it into this other track in Ableton now. So what I'm going to do here is consolidate that and I'll just reverse that sample. So naturally the piano sounded just awful playing normally, but reversed and then drenched in reverb, it creates this atmospheric sound that blends perfectly into the rest of this track. I honestly had no idea if this would work. I just pressed some notes that were in key and hoped for the best. I'm sure by actually spending some time refining this, I could get it into a really cool place. This technique works especially well if there's a delay on the original sound, as it gives a cool effect when it's reversed. Give it a try. Soft synth sounds and pianos with long release tails work best. Another technique that I try occasionally is when playing a melody in by hand, I kind of play chords or two notes, but slightly delayed from each other. Let me show you what I mean. So this is the melody from my track Reflection Pool, and it started out like this. Not exactly inspiring, but when I played it in by hand, it was slightly out of time and I liked it. So then I did it on purpose, and this is what I ended up with. think about it, this is how you'd strum a guitar. One way to really tell if someone's used a virtual guitar in their track is that it's played like a piano with the notes all being played at the same time. A real guitar always has the strings played slightly ahead or behind each other. I think on a subconscious level, that's why I kind of like this melody. It's because it reminds me of a guitar. There are literally thousands of weird and wonderful ways you can get creative and push through any sort of writer's block. I've only touched on a few here, but the main theme is just to try doing things you wouldn't normally do. Let me know in the comments what your techniques are for when you get stuck on a track.